It's cooking! So wow. Hey everyone, this is the first episode of some basic tutorial episodes I'm going to do. So it's not going to be a whole recipe, but how to do some basics. So the first one I'm going to do is how to make fresh pasta, totally from scratch. And it's only a few ingredients. So of course it's flour, eggs here, whole eggs I like to use. You'll see some recipes they'll do egg yolks and whites or separate them out. Some salt and then some olive oil. That's all that I put in mine. But when you make your own pasta, you can put all sorts of stuff in it. And just to go over the ratio, it's 1 cup of flour to 2 eggs. And then I do about a teaspoon of olive oil for each cup of flour. So now I'm going to switch the camera over to overview so you can see how this is all done and the equipment that I use to do it. So I have a few options on how you want to do this. You can do this in a big bowl, or if you have enough open space on the counter like this, you could do it directly on the counter. And this is something really fun to do when you have like a party going on or a hangout and you want to show people how to make pasta. I've done it a few times. And every time you make pasta, it never comes out the same, but you know what went into it and you made it yours. And like I said, you can make the ingredients anything you want. You could season at this stage. And you'll see there's even fancier pastas like squid ink pasta that have that black color to it. So you have a lot of options that way versus just buying it dried in the box. So first thing, since we're on the counter, I want to make a well here as big as you can with some high walls in it. Because we're going to be mixing it directly on the counter here. And I like to put a little flour on the bottom because we don't want this to stick too much. And I put the olive oil directly in there. So remember, it's about a teaspoon per cup. I'm gonna do about 2 here. Touch more. This gives it that nice yellow color. And then we'll season it at this stage too. So just a big pinch of salt there. Now of course when you're working with pasta, you wanna make sure that your hands are floured really well. So I'm just gonna flour them a little bit now. I'm not gonna be using them just yet. But here with the eggs, remember I'm using whole eggs here. You'll see some recipes call for using water or egg yolks only, but I don't add water to it because I want it to have that really nice rich color and flavor. So these are whole eggs, and what you want to do is start adding in a little bit at a time. You don't want to add it in all at once because you'll have eggs starting to spill out. And what you want to do is kind of start mixing it inside of here. And another important tip is that you want to whisk the eggs separately from this, because if you whisk it directly inside of here, you're going to have a hard time trying to combine it. You'll see as you mix it, you start pouring in flour from the sides, a little bit at a time. You'll see it starts to come together. And when it starts thickening up, that's when you add in a little bit more egg and you start bringing in more flour. And there's no rush here. You'll see it's pretty quick when you do this, but you don't want to speed through it. You just end up making a mess and it just gets harder to manage if you do that. You see there, each time as it keeps thickening up, add in a little more egg. And as you make it, you'll kind of see how much egg and flour to ratio it needs. You do want to be careful because if you don't add in enough egg, it'll be too dry and it'll end up being crumbly. But my ratio usually works out pretty well. Remember, it's 1 cup of flour to 2 eggs, if you use the entire egg. See there's thickening them up. Let's add some more here. You'll see the well's getting a bit bigger here, but remember we just keep folding it in. And that olive oil really helps here with it not sticking to the counter too much, but it is going to stick a little bit, which is fine. I'll show you how we can get that off of there. You see, just do it a little bit at a time. Some more egg. See the well is getting crazy here. So now I'm breaking up the walls of the well. We're going to start combining it together more here. So you're getting that nice pasta dough forming. So I'm gonna add in the rest of this here and just kind of soak up the rest of this flour here. And just let it kind of drip as you do that to get everything out of there. Remember, we don't like to waste anything. So now when the fork is not really doing the trick like it is now, it's getting really hard to mix this. This is when you start switching to your hands. I'm just going to use it to kind of scrape the counter a little bit more. And then grab any egg, like over here you see left over, we want to put that into the pile. And then we'll use our hands to grab the rest of the flour here. This is really important, you want to put lots of flour on your hands. And you'll see when we need to add more flour to this, we're going to do it either on the counter or on your hands. You don't want to throw it directly onto there, because then you'll end up drying it out too much. And you kind of want to lightly press it, because if you press down too hard at this point, it's going to end up sticking to your hands a bit too much. So you want to avoid it getting too sticky. You see here I'm using the fork to scrape the counter here to get that off, and then start pressing in the flour here into the ball. Oh, a piece flew over there, it's fine. Just want to keep working this here. Kind of bring all the flour back into the middle here and combine it in. And you'll see as you do that, it becomes less and less sticky. That's exactly what we want, just to incorporate everything. If you feel it sticking on your hands again, to kind of reset, you want to rub your hands together to get as much of it off again, and then add on some more flour to your hands. And that helps you get more of it off too. You'll see it come off in crumbs here. And you start folding it in some more. Now I'll kind of fast forward through this. Now it's just a matter of adding a little flour at a time and then cleaning up the counter. Getting as much as that flour off. So this is the first time doing the overhead cam. A lot of hair in the view. I am working out on making the above view a little bit better, but this is a good way to show you how we make this dough from a top-down view. Alright, so we've gotten most of it off of the counter and most of it off my hands. So now what we want to do is get those gluten strands working inside of here. So it's kind of like when you're kneading bread. You want to kind of stretch it out and then use this part of your hand to knead the pasta dough here. And as soon as you feel it start to stick to you, that's when you're going to flour your hands a little bit more. You'll find you're flouring your hands about every 30 seconds or so. But you just want to press it out and then pull it in and keep doing that. If you get this kind of situation going where it's sticking on the bottom, that's when you want to sprinkle a little bit of flour onto it. And just kind of work it in a circle to unstick it. And remember, there's no rush here. You'll find the more and more you do this, the quicker you'll be at it. But especially starting out, it does take a little bit of time, but it's really fun to just kind of get your hands in there and make that pasta dough. And you'll see when you move quick, it keeps it from sticking too much. So see, we're not adding in too much at once, because you don't want to dry it out. Just want to get it to the point where we can handle it and it's not too sticky anymore. So you want to just keep working that dough. Make sure you keep moving it around and incorporating that flour. You're always adding flour every 20 or 30 seconds or so. That's the most important thing when you're working it on the counter. You don't want it to stick too much to anything on the counter or your hands, or the bowl if you're going to go that route. It's important to just keep moving. Alright, it's been about 5 minutes or so. So you want to kind of form it into a ball, and then kind of pinch off a piece and see if it kind of bounces back. And it looks like it's almost to that point. That's when you know it's done and ready to rest. So we're getting really close here. Let me just try and clean up as much as I can off the counter. while also kneading it a little bit. I want to keep this non-stick going, so a little more flour. Kind of tuck it into itself here. Let's see that pinch test again. If you see it starts rebounding back, that's when you know it's ready to be rested here now. So we rest it inside of the fridge. That's really important. You want to get it nice and cool. That way you can work with it. Because remember, our hands are really warm. So if I were to start pressing this right now, it would start tearing. So definitely need it to rest for at least 20 minutes. You could do this overnight if you wanted to, but at the minimum 20 minutes. And you may wonder if you can make pasta ahead of time and then save it. You can keep the dough in the fridge, but if you want to keep the pasta, you want to actually make it and then freeze it. But it just has to be super dry first. So we want to put this plastic wrap on it and then make sure that everything is covered. We don't want it to get a nice, or I shouldn't say nice, a weird skin on it. So we want to make sure that everything is covered. Because if you throw this in the fridge without it being covered, it's going to get like this hard shell and then you can't really work with it after that point. So I'm going to double wrap it. I didn't rip off a big enough piece here. It doesn't have to be airtight, it just has to be covered completely. So I'll wrap that and then wait at least 20 minutes here. Alright, it's been 20 minutes now. So you see here, got the dough, has that nice dark yellow color, which is what I was going for. And so now we're going to flour our surface here in our hands. It's really important you have flour on everything because we don't want it to start sticking at this stage. So just going to unwrap it here. See, it doesn't have that weird shell on it, so we're good there. So I'm just going to quickly flour this so I can handle it. Since this was 2 cups of flour, I kind of want to divide it in half, as even as you can get it. I'm sticking here to flour my hands just a little bit more. So they're pretty even here. So at this stage, what you'd want to do, if you have a pasta press like this, it's perfect. It's really cheap on Amazon. So this portion here is to roll it out flat, and then over here is an attachment for different types of pasta. So here we have for spaghetti and then flat pasta here. And of course, you could just run it through here to do like lasagna or something like that. In this case, I'm going to do the flat pasta, so like fettuccine or something like that. And at this stage, what we want to do is get this rolled out about the length of it, or the width of this, I should say. And I have a drying rack here. I'm going to actually use the upright support to roll this out because I don't have a thin rolling pin, so this will be good for me here. And the same thing, you want to flour everything, so even the wood. I just want to roll this out as much as I can. It's not going to be too flat because of course that's what this is for. We just want to get it into as much of a nice flat shape as we can, and keeping it inside the length of this. And that's just perfect. So I'm going to do the same thing with this. Move the flour over here, and flour this up, and then roll this out. The minute you see it stick, that means you need more flour. And you'll see that you can only roll it out so much before it starts bouncing back on itself. So this is fine here. So this machine, you never wash this. Water should never touch it. Just pure flour and pasta dough here. So you want to flour the machine, and I'm going to run this through here. So when you see one of these up close, there's numbers on here. It goes 1 to 9. You want to start out the lowest number. In this case, it's 1. That's the widest, and we want to run it through here, going down each number. So as it comes out, you don't want it to bunch up at the bottom or you're going to have a sticky mess. So I'm grabbing it as it comes through the press here. You see there, this is where the fun begins. So it's getting longer. I want to keep the flour going. I want to flour this a little bit and also the other side. We don't want any sticking going on. So now I'm going to increase it to 2, and we're going to repeat this process until we get to about 7 or so. The reason I'm not going all the way down to 9 is because that's super thin, and normally you'd want to do that for like ravioli or something like that, where the pasta will puff up after you cook it. But I'm making pasta noodles here, so we want to have some thickness to it. So same thing, flour this side, and then flour that. You see I'm handling it with the tops of my hands, and that way we can kind of feed it through. Increase this to 3. So you'll see each time I'm doing it, it's getting thinner and thinner. Come over here and grab this side. You don't want it to bunch up at the bottom. You see here, almost each time we're doing it, it's doubling in size. And we're doing pretty good on flour here, so I'm not going to put too much this time. Increase this to 4, and then we do it again. Just want to drape it in there, and then kind of keep turning it until it grabs the end of the pasta here. Kind of guide it in there. Yep, there it goes. And if you see it going to the side, you want to kind of guide it back to the other end. That way it doesn't bunch up on the side of the pasta press. See here, it's getting super long. So now I want to do a little more flour on this side too. And then when you get to about, say, maybe 2 feet here, you want to have it, that way it's a little bit more manageable. So I'm going to leave this over here while I flatten this one out more too. So we're currently on 5, going to go up to 6 and flatten this. Remember, I'm only going to about 7. Because I want it to have some thickness to it. And remember, when you cook the pasta, it's gonna thicken up again too. So we want some noodles with some substance here. And let me flour this. I'm gonna set up the drying rack because I'm gonna need that after this next press at 7. So you see there's ones like this, and there's other ones that kind of look like a horizontal rack, and you can hang the pasta on there. Or if you're on a budget, you can even use a hanger and just hang the pasta directly on there. Doesn't have to be anything crazy. But you kind of hold the pasta here hanging while you finish it up. And then if you're going to freeze it, you leave it on here for about an hour until it's totally dry, and then go ahead and freeze it in bunches. So here I'm at 7, so I'm going to run this through one more time. Remember, grab it on the other end. So now we see this is really thin here. That's exactly what we want. And over here, I'm going to switch the crank over to the flat pasta. And give this one last good flour here, and I'm going to run it through. So you kind of want to get it into there first, and then switching sides, and then that pasta. I'm going to lay this out flat over here and then grab this because you don't want it to bunch up at the bottom. And just keep feeding it through, pulling it through. Yes, this is exactly what we want here. If it gets too crazy for you, again, you can have it. I have this for ravioli, but you can use like a knife to cut it. And I want to go ahead and drape it over here. And then kind of use your hands to split it up a little bit. It is technically cut, but I like to do this that way it doesn't get stuck or clump up while it's drying there. And then same thing. So bam, you see that here? I'm going to kind of straighten it out as much as you can. It won't be perfect, but I'll put these on the higher parts of the rack over here. So that's one down. I'm going to go ahead and fast forward through the rest, but you can watch my technique here as it has its fast forwarding. Kind of get some reinforcement on that. So like I mentioned in the description, this is much better on the YouTube version. So go ahead and check that out. I have it linked in my bio. But it allows you to see the whole wide picture. Kind of had to narrow this down for IGTV. but it's really neat to see it from both sides. I highly recommend getting a pasta press. It makes this process super easy. If you don't have one, you can use a rolling pin. It's just a bit more time consuming, but you have to roll out the pieces with a rolling pin and then use a knife to cut the strands as straight as you can. And also you have to have them as you go along to make regular sized noodles. Alright, I'm going to put it back to regular speed here. I'm going to try and do this without cutting it, just for the fun of it. You can see how crazy this can get. So I'm on 6 right now. After this, I'm going to run it through this side one more time. I'm going to flour this over here so I can get that bottom part. I'm going to flour the top so I can fold it over there while I adjust this to 7, so that's the last press. I'm going to flour this one more time and you'll see how this doubles in length here. Same thing. Come over here and grab this side. You want to guide it through. Remember, if it's pulling to one side, kind of guide it to go the other way. That way it doesn't get stuck on one end of the pasta press. So here we go. Have this super long piece here. Same thing. Flour it. Bring it over here, flour the wide noodle, do this one more time. As soon as it takes, I'm going to kind of transfer this over here and then feed it in there. Alright, looks like enough is coming in, so I'm going to switch back over here and grab this. I have to lift it up a little bit to get it to go in here more. There we go. You see, this can get crazy. And just kind of straighten it out. We don't want it to bunch up at the bottom of this. Just keep feeding it through. See, these are going to be nice long pasta strands. Go ahead and cut it here. And there we go. That's the last of the pasta here. This will be fun to twirl around on a fork. And here you have it. Absolutely stunning fresh pasta.